What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today we need to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is going to be where is GTA 6 Trailer 3? So we're staring down now at August 7th. Everything's convinced that the date, that will be the date. But Rockstar has gone almost completely dark. But dark doesn't mean nothing is happening. So let's go ahead and break down everything that's actually come out recently because there's going to be a lot to unpack. So first up, Rockstar and Take-Two are finally getting aggressive about AI generated fake leaks. And you've all seen them, obviously, these AI slop videos claiming to be gameplay footage. And for years, Rockstar barely lifted a finger. But now they're actually, actively taking down these type of videos. Take-Two is notoriously litigious, so a lot of us have been, wondering when they, flex that muscle on this specific problem. Some people are reading this as a sign that the real marketing push is about to ramp up, pretty much. Because why, bother cleaning house unless you're actually about to move in with the real thing? And speaking of marketing, or like the lack of it at least, this has become the topic in the community right now. Comparing this to RDR2's rollout in 2018, back then Rockstar was feeding us constant screenshots, press previews, teaser drops, but this time it's basically silence, especially since they said this is going to be an aggressive summer marketing campaign as well. But ever since the game was, went live for pre-orders on June 25th, it has been completely silent. So, obviously GTA 6 is landing in November instead of the usual September timeline, so the math does still kind of work since there is about 3 to 4 months. Since usually they do ramp up around 3 to 4 months, but instead of trickling out 5 screenshots at a time like they did with RDR2, they front loaded us with over 60 images all at once alongside the pre-order announcement. Different strategy, and clearly a lot of the fan base is not agreeing with it. But, a former Rockstar community voice actually said it best. This drought is killing momentum for what's supposed to be the most anticipated game ever made. Now, here's a fun detail that's actually buried in those screenshots. A lot of what we saw wasn't even base game content. It was actually Ultimate Edition and pre-order exclusive stuff. So, pretty much, what does that mean? Classic Rockstar move, and they're using post-processing to obscure backgrounds in a lot of, they're pretty much like a lot of these shots, almost like they don't actually want us seeing too much of the open world. And yeah, so they pretty much don't want us to see like the open world. And even this close to launch, even this close to launch, still little things are popping. So for example, Jason's house at the start of the game, a rumored basketball hoop mini game, what looks like a boat storage area, cool stuff, but people obviously want gameplay. So if the next trailer drops without actual gameplay footage, you can already expect that to be the number one complaint. So let's talk about physical media, because this turned into a real controversy, especially, since Take-Two confirmed that there will be no disc version of GTA 6, and that is a Take-Two's call, and not really a Rockstar creative decision, so don't read too much into about the game itself. But it did get way worse. According to Rockstar's own support page, digital codes in Japan's reportedly expire, after about 170 days. So what does that really mean? That means like if someone buys a code or the code box or whatever and they don't claim it for up to 170 days, obviously, which would be a little bit odd why they wouldn't do that. But if they didn't, they would literally lose access to the game. And obviously, this is a huge issue in terms of like, security, I guess, like, or not security, but like what you actually own and what you don't own. Nobody wants to pay for a game and then not even be able to use it. But other than that, this physical media debate, even pretty much pulled in Dan Houser, who was Rockstar's co-founder and who left the company a few years back. In an interview with IGN, he said he personally loves physical media and thinks companies should offer it as an option. And he said he personally loves physical media and thinks companies should offer it as an option, even if he's not the type to go out personally to buy discs anymore. He still thinks it should be an option. But Lex Jones, a longtime Rockstar contributor now working with Hauser at Absurd Ventures, echoed at the sentiment too. Talking about the nostalgia of physically owning something, versus pure digital convenience. Nothing really explosive. They're just more evidence that like the old guard pretty much just cares about choice in a way that the current corporate structure doesn't seem to prioritize. And that corporate direction is a bigger conversation. A former GTA 5 technical director spoke with a gaming podcast recently and made an interesting point. And that was that Rockstar leadership, unlike a lot of studios where execs are disconnected from the product, is still deeply hands on. He pretty much described senior leadership actually playing bills and giving direct, sometimes brutal feedback. And that is part of why, according to him, Rockstar Games still feel like Rockstar Games despite the company getting more corporate overall. He was also skeptical about a 60 FPS mode on different consoles, and it might end up being a PC, or sorry, it's on different consoles, and something that you were like counting on temper your actual expectations, because it might end up being a PC only feature down the line, and there is still no confirmed PC release window at all. So on the money side, and this is honestly staggering, but GTA 6 has reportedly the strongest pre-order campaign of all time, with projections suggesting it could sell somewhere between 37 and 51 million copies in its first week. So one analytics firm estimated that around $260 million in pre order spending in just the first week alone. 13 years since GTA 5, this kind of demand does make sense. And, as for the delay fears, Take Two filled an SEC proxy statement reaffirming that, pretty much reaffirming that November 19th will be the release date. And also what's it, Bloomberg's Jason Snyder, I believe. Yeah, Jason Schreier, sorry. Jason Schreier, who was excellent sourcing inside Rockstar, said that about 90 and then said that he's about 90 percent confident in its holding. So, there was also concern about labor unrest. Workers at the GTA 6 headquarters and studios had been organizing and even discussing potential strike action, pretty much discussing potential strike action because of just how much they were working and stuff. So, obviously you don't want people, going on strike, especially since when the game is about to drop, that could also potentially cause some delays. But, the union reportedly had its first meeting with studio management and called it a step in the right direction. So that particular threat to the release date looks like it is cooling off, however. Now, if you really want to know about the GTA Online integration as well, some files have been suggested that there will be an online component tied to GTA 6, but if history with Red Dead Online is any indication, definitely expect it to launch a month or two after the base game rather than day one. It most definitely will not launch day one, and definitely not in December either, since most of the developer team will be out for the holidays, since there is quite a few holidays, especially Christmas and stuff during December. But realistically, for GTA Online or GTA 6 Online, we would be talking about either January into February at the earliest, at the absolute earliest, and then the latest would most likely be like 1 year. But this is where I get a little bit worried, honestly, since Rockstar just dropped a massive GTA Online update and the community reaction has been rough. People are calling it one of the worst updates in the game's history because of how expensive and grindy the new heist content is. And what does that really mean? That means pretty much that, you know, some estimates put the cost of pretty much cost of running it at 15 million in-game dollars from scratch, and that's obviously going to be pushing people towards shark cards. And leaked internal financials show that GTA Online is still pulling in almost $10 million a week on average, compared to Red Dead Online's roughly half a million. So when people say they're nervous about how GTA 6 Online is going to be monetized, this is exactly why. The current cash cow is still moving loudly, and Rockstar has had zero incentive to change that formula. So where does that really leave us? So trailer 3 is pretty much expected any day now. Insiders like Tom Henderson called this pretty much time frame months ago. And honestly, I think we're finally about to see the marketing machine kick into gear, and we could obviously all hope for that. We do want that to happen, but other than that, I hope you guys are subscribed so you don't miss it if you don't miss the trailer 3 the second it drops. And drop your predictions in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one.